Let's start by talking about some of the different formats for hypotheses that connect the dots for data. I want you to understand that there are really two buckets, and the first is correlational data. Very often in the news, you will hear news stories that connect data, and it almost sounds like A causes B. But really, it doesn't. It's just a relationship. So, for example, you might see something that says, for instance, the people with who eat butter have more instances of high cholesterol. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that eating butter causes high cholesterol. It just means that there's a relationship, which can be very informative, but not necessarily causal. So, for example, another example might be that young women under the age of 35 purchase fewer units of our product than women who are older than 35. That doesn't mean that their age caused them to buy or to not buy. It just means there's a relationship. The number of suits sold varies directly with the level of business cycle. Again, just a relationship. This is a little bit different than a causal relationship. So, for example, if we had data that showed that an increase in family income leads to the increase in the percentage of income saved, that would be more of a causal relationship. There's more disposable income, right? So they can save more. Loyalty to a grocery store increases the probability of purchasing that store's private brands. That's a causal relationship. Let's create a hypothetical scenario. So let's say that Pizza Hut sales and Terre Haute have been dropping. What is the management dilemma here? Well, the dilemma is that obviously sales have been dropping, but that's not the question that we're asking for our research. So we need to define a management question that if we're going to do research to find out why sales have been dropping, we need a specific question that helps to center our topic of research. So there might be a few different things that we could create as our management question. We might want to define it as why are sales dropping in Terre Haute at different Pizza Hut locations. We might want to ask how do sales in store compare to online sales or delivery sales. We might want to define it more narrowly. How have pizza sales changed in the last year in Terre Haute? Do you see all three of those are very different questions, and any of those that we would pick would determine very differently the next steps that we would take. So it's really important to understand, okay, what's my dilemma? And then what big idea or big question am I trying to answer? And then you can go from there in terms of determining what's next. I want to draw your attention to a diagram that's present in your book. And it's really important for you to take a look at this diagram because it really is the blueprint for the entire course. And it'll help you to understand when you're doing research, the funnel and the mental process that you need to go through to narrow down your ideas from a general idea and general dilemma to very specific questions that can help you to measure that data and create responses or actionable items that address your research question. So the very first thing that you need to look at is the research question. So we just talked about the management dilemma and the management question. So once you've got the management question, then you look at research questions. So again, you can narrow it down just a little bit more generally. And typically what you'll have is you'll have a management dilemma, a management question, and then you'll have maybe one or two research questions, right? And then you refine those research questions and then you come up with measurable questions to include in, say, a survey or an interview. So a research question is really the hypothesis that best states the objective of your research. So it's the question that focuses your attention. From there, after you've got those research questions, an investigative question is the question that the researcher must answer to really satisfactorily answer the research question. And then measurement questions are the questions that you might ask participants or observations that you may make of participants. Yep. So again, it's like a building block. You start with your management dilemma. So what symptoms are causing concern, right? And then you narrow that down to a management question. How can management eliminate the negative symptoms? Or how can management fully capitalize on an opportunity? And then you narrow it down to one or two research questions. What plausible courses of action are available to management to correct the problem or take advantage of the opportunity? And what items should be considered? And then you create investigative questions. What does the manager need to know, or what do you need to know to choose the best alternative from the available courses of action? And then once you know what those alternatives, once you've got something that can help you narrow down those alternatives, then you need to create measurement questions. What do you need to ask or observe to obtain information that's actionable? And then all of those questions should be leading you to some sort of decision or recommended course of action. Typically, there are three kinds of management questions. You can divide these into three categories, really. The first is a choice of purpose or choice of objectives, where you figure out what we want to achieve. The second is generalization and evaluation of solutions. So maybe choices between concrete actions to solve problems, right? So how can we achieve the ends to what we seek? So for example, here we might say, how can we achieve our 5-year goal of doubling sales and profits? You'll see this a lot in different management techniques like balanced scorecards. What should be done to improve our program for product repairs and servicing, right? So you keep it kind of general. Again, management questions start by being general. The third category is troubleshooting or control, so monitoring or diagnosing ways that an organization is failing to meet the goals. So for example, how well is our marketing program meeting goals, or why is our marketing program not meeting its goals? And then you can be more specific. What is our product line's sales to promotion cost ratio? Why does our department have the lowest sales to web page visit ratio? Why does our product line have the lowest off-shelf display occasions in the industry, right? So again, we're starting from general and getting more. Research questions are all about fine-tuning, right? So you start to look at the different variables that could influence the situation. So let's go back to our Pizza Hut example. One misnomer that people might make, or mistake that people might make, would be to automatically assume that it's a certain reason that sales are dropping. So for example, you might automatically start assuming that it's because of the menu. Well, there are a lot of other things that can influence sales besides a menu. Maybe it's hours or low hours of different locations. Maybe there was some sort of, phenomenon. Maybe, I don't know, some incident with the weather that in the last month decreased sales. Maybe it got really hot and people weren't eating pizza. I don't know, but you have to look at all the different possible variables before you can start to narrow down your research questions. You start to break them down, and then you set a scope of the study. So you might want to make sure in your questions, if you're asking about pizza patterns from the last year, that you include that in the questions that you're asking. So set a scope for the study. Are we talking about the last month? Are we talking about the last year? What kinds of customers are we going to be talking to? Are we looking at people that order online or people that go to the store? That sort of thing. Then you evaluate your hypotheses, and then you determine actions based on the evidence, right? So again, let's go back to our Pizza Hut dilemma. So the dilemma, why have sales declined, right? We're going to go with a general question of how can we improve sales? The research questions might be, should we change our menu? Should we change our hours? Should we invest time and money in training? Investigative questions might be, are customers satisfied with the menu? What is the level of service satisfaction? Maybe even at a particular location. What does our chef need to know about our menu? Those are just a few things that we could ask. Then we might narrow it down even further. So how do we measure those things? So, for example, with the menu, on a scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with the current menu? Explain. On a scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with the service? Explain. And by the answers that we receive there, we might gain excellent insight on whether we have a menu problem or we have a service problem at a particular location. Then from this, what could we decide? So hopefully, after we've arranged the appropriate measurement questions, we could determine, for example, if it was a menu issue, maybe we add gluten-free options and more desserts to the menu. Or from a service perspective, maybe we need to expand the lunch hours or create customer-centric training program and provide incentives. We might find out from our research that there's one particular location that has a person working the phones that people really don't like and doesn't do a good job servicing the customer. So again, the idea is that you have a central question and you create measurement questions that lead you to answers around that particular question. You shouldn't be asking a lot of questions that don't pertain to the management question or to the measurement questions. The other thing that I want you to think about is that screening questions are really important. So you also need to determine what participants are most qualified to give you actionable insight. So again, if we are thinking about, say, Pizza Hut and Terre Haute, we wouldn't want to accept data from people that don't visit Pizza Hut, right? So it's important early on in the survey to ask appropriate screening questions. And there are different ways to do this. You want to try to use the minimal number of questions possible because long surveys create fatigue. The longer your survey is, the less likely people are to take time to finish it, especially in this digital day and age. So for example, going back to Pizza Hut, we would probably ask somewhere early on in the survey, have you visited a Pizza Hut store before? Right? Now, that's just a yes or no question. A better way to determine a yes answer to that and asking a little bit more information, we could ask, when was the last time you visited a Pizza Hut? And we would probably have the responses categorized maybe by the last week, the last month, the last 6 months, the last year. And we know that if they answer in the last, 6 months to a year, that they have visited Pizza Hut stores before. We might ask, when was the last time you had Pizza Hut pizza? We could also ask, do you usually order online, by phone, or in person? That might tell us too, again, depending on our management question. If we are only worried about the locational data and the in-house customer exchanges, we might not be worried about people that mostly order online. And if we accept their data and we really want to know what their experience was at the location, if somebody orders online most of the time or by phone to get delivery, that might skew our data. So we want to make sure we screen them appropriately. And finally, what Terre Haute pizza location do you usually visit? Again, this might be very important because we might be able to isolate one particular location that is really the problem for the whole city or the whole region, right? But that would depend on what our original management question was. So those screening questions are important. The other thing that I just want to remind you is that an introduction of some sort is also important. You typically want to let somebody know, if you're going to do a survey, especially approximately how long the survey is going to take them, because I'm going to get frustrated if I'm expecting 5 minutes and it takes me 20, and I'm probably going to quit. So you want to set appropriate expectations and let them know what the information is going to be used for so that it's a credible survey. I hope that you found this information helpful, and please let me know if you have any further questions. Again, research can be really kind of exciting in the sense that it helps us to answer the important questions of our business and of our time to help us find actionable insight that we can make changes. I hope you have a great day. Thanks.